third is Suarez. Goodell comes running in. He's under it, makes the catch. Here's the throw to the plate. It's in the air. He is out! Cameron Rick hangs on! Oh, man, what a play! Deep to right field. Way up there and way second down,
And welcome back to the Stupid Money Podcast. We get to talk about a Phillies wild card series win today. The Phillies handling the Marlins in 2 games. I had it going 3. I think. Did you have 2?
I had it going 3. I had them losing game 2.
Okay, so we both had 3. Oh yeah, you and Nick had them losing game 2. I had them losing game 1. None of that happened. Zach Wheeler, 6 2/3 innings in game 1, allowed 1 run, which the ball didn't leave the infield that inning. It was just kind of annoying stuff that, wasn't his fault. Easily could have been a 7 or 8 inning scoreless outing for him if the infielders were positioned a little differently on a couple of those balls. So big outing by him there. The offense did just enough, played a lot of small ball. 4-1, no homers. I'm trying to think. Stott had a single that scored a run. Castellanos got the third base. Coaching was a little perplexing in that game. The first inning, the vibe there, I was like, oh no. When they got second and third with no outs, and then Waltham maybe should have sent Schwarber on the ball. Bohm hit, and then Harper struck out, and I was like, yeah, JT's not doing a thing. That was a bad vibe, but then they came back a couple innings later, got a run, and that was that. Last night, Nola was insane. 7 scoreless. The only trouble he had was a ball into the gap that Pache maybe could have caught, went off his glove, ended up being a double, and then 3 pitches later, Nola threw out the runner trying to steal. So that was pretty much the only trouble they had up until the 9th inning when it was 7-0, and then the Marlins scored a run with 2 outs. So, I mean, it was as dominant of a playoff series as you can have. The Phillies looked like a team that has been there and done that now. It looked a lot different from last year. Last year seemed like kind of like a miracle run. This year, it looks like a team that's there and understands what they have to do.
Yeah, it felt weird to watch almost, because I feel like for the last 10 years and even the first year and a half, 2 years of the whole Harper Realmuto era, that kind of thing, we've kind of just been asking for competent baseball and a team that looked like they enjoyed being around each other, and they actually just wanted to play normal baseball and not the weird things always just seem to happen the last decade. And
yeah.
The fans were begging them just to do anything that would kind of draw interest and just get some buzz back around Citizens Bank Park. And since last October, it's kind of just happened that Philadelphia is turned into the capital of baseball in terms of national coverage. The national media flocks to Citizens Bank Park any chance they get at this point. Realistically, I know they were the 5 seed. The Marlins had a negative run differential, and it wasn't really close to being positive. And they were probably the worst playoff team. But that was the 8:00 slot. They could have picked realistically any wild card series to be the 8:00, but they knew what Citizens Bank Park was going to look like. And kind of like you said, the team looked like been there, done that. They went into the season saying 2 more wins. They wanted 2 more than last year. And they just went out for 2 games, workman-like, just handled business. And there were tense moments, but we were saying that it was going to go 3 games and they were going to struggle. There was never even a hint of struggle. They just went out there. All the Marlins narrative from the last 2 years, that's done. That's over with, put to rest. I think it's to the point where they're just a really good team that kind of figured out how to win last year, and they carried it over to this year.
Yeah, I do agree. And obviously, like Castellanos got thrown out in game 1 at the plate, and Pache, like I mentioned, had a ball he maybe could have caught. But other than that, there was nothing kind of stupid or dumb that we've come accustomed to with the Phillies doing. Like they for the most part played great defense. No one was throwing the ball over the infield. The pitchers did not have that blow up inning where a reliever walked the first 2 guys of the inning, or Nola gave up like a back-breaking home run. Like none of that stuff happened, and that to me, that was just the big thing to see. Like they looked as professional as all season, and this is when it matters. So that was great to see. It was really good to see Bryson Stott with the grand slam. That was awesome. 5 RBIs in the series. Trey Turner, 2 singles, 2 doubles in the series too. Mm-hmm. He had a huge series. Realmuto home run. So a lot of different guys did things. I think every starter had a hit in game 1, and then game 2 was pretty much the Turner and Stott show. So that was awesome. But moving on now, we both predicted this in our season preview at the beginning of the season back in March. Both had them playing the Braves in the NLDS. It's happening. I'm just going to say right now, we did both pick them to lose that series at the beginning of the season, but we're gonna go into it with a clean slate now. It looks like it's going to be Strider on Saturday for the Braves, and I assume the Phillies will go with Suarez, and then Wheeler would pitch Monday, and then game 3 Tuesday or Wednesday?
It's Saturday, Monday, Wednesday.
Okay, so Wheeler and Nola they'd each be on. Wheeler would be on 5 days of rest, and Nola would be on 6 days, right? So
Wheeler will have an extra day.
Yeah.
And then Nola has an extra 2.
Yeah, so an entire week. So, to me, it's kind of like if you could find a way to get to Strider in game 1, and then you have what I would presume is the advantage with Wheeler in game 2 in Atlanta, a place he pitches pretty well for the most part against, is it going to be Fried?
Yeah, game 2 will probably be Fried.
And he has a blister apparently, and he pitched in the Braves had those simulated games this week because of the whole we lost last year because we weren't ready, blah, blah, blah. He apparently pitched one of those games and wore a Band-Aid, but he's not allowed to wear a Band-Aid in an actual game.
Yeah, he wore a Band-Aid and gave up a home run to Kevin Pillar. So
yeah. So I'm interested to see how that goes. But I'm just saying, like, Strider has owned them in the regular season this year. 6 innings, 2 runs, 9 strikeouts, win. 6 innings, 1 run, 9 strikeouts, win. 7 innings, 1 run, 9 strikeouts, win. 7 innings, 3 runs, 11 strikeouts, win. They've seen him 4 times in the regular season. Obviously, we know what happened last year in the playoffs. He was a little banged up, but the Phillies just ambushed the hell out of him. 5 runs in 2 1/3, I'm pretty sure. So there's history there. We know what he said about the whole, I don't want fans thing. Well, he's pitching game 1 in Atlanta, so I guess he gets the break there. But what are your thoughts on the pitching here? Because Atlanta's a little banged up. Morton can't go. Obviously, Fried has the blister. Elder, I guess, is their other guy right now that's going to be involved. So I kind of think, I know the Braves offense is insane, but the Phillies seem to have the pitching advantage right now, the way it looks with how those 2 guys pitched, and the bullpen has really not had to do a thing in over almost 2 weeks now.
Yeah, I mean, for us, the rotation kind of sets up identically to how it did last year.
Yeah.
Obviously, for them, it's a little different. Strider's healthy. Fried really isn't. I'll be honest, like, going into, series based on, gut feeling and stuff, I was much more anxious for the Marlins series versus this Brave series. I think a lot of that might be we really haven't had, the time in the playoffs where it's we are expected to win. Last year, we were the underdog in every series, and now it's kind of Atlanta's the best offense since like 1927 or whatever. But like, I don't know. It's just like I know I've said this to you a bunch. Like every game that they've played against the Braves this year, like it looks like they belong on the same field as them. And I think last year in the playoffs, kind of that series did wonders for this core. Like the Braves did what they did this year for the entirety of the season, but like I don't think our roster is particularly scared of them.
No.
There's not really that fear factor. Like, yeah, they're very good. Like, I'm not saying I'm not scared of them because we're so much better than them. Like, they are a historic offense, but like the way that the pitching is lined up, like Max, we haven't really seen Strider pitch in the playoffs. Like, he's dominant regular season, and it seems like his splits are kind of better against good teams. Like his ERA is high, but I know like a couple bad teams got to him this year.
But Wheeler was the same way, honestly.
His ERA is much higher at home. Strider, I think it's in the high 4s at home, maybe like a 4.7 at Truist. So it's kind of pick your poison with that. Like have him come to like Citizens Bank Park and deal with the fans after his no fans comment, or deal with the 4.7 at Truist. So I know we got to him last year. I don't really take much from that because he was banged up, but so it'll be interesting to see how he kind of goes in his first real playoff start. Fried, like blisters are lingering, and like you really don't know what you're going to get with him, because if he's still pitching with a Band-Aid on at this point, like you can't do that on Monday. So that'll be interesting to see. And I don't really think Bryce Elder like is a playoff pitcher. Like he's kind of looking at him, he's a different pitcher than Luzardo in the sense that he doesn't throw nearly as hard, and he gets a lot more ground balls and a lot less strikeouts, and his off speed is much better. But like Luzardo is 45th percentile in hard hit. Elder's 37th, so he gives up even more barrels. His walk rate's a little bit below average. He doesn't strike guys out. He doesn't miss bats. And he doesn't really get guys to chase. And the average exit velocity is like really high. Like I don't see Bryce Elder as this big intimidating playoff starter, especially if it's game 3 in Citizens Bank Park. If the Phillies take one in Atlanta and they have to go to Bryce Elder in game 1 back at Citizens Bank Park with like the swing game in the series, like that just seems like it screams like big spot for the Phillies. And that Aaron Nola is just so much better at home, and we kind of saw that yesterday. And John Clark tweeted this out. This season versus the Braves, in games pitched by Taijuan Walker, Christopher Sanchez, Lorenzen, and Dylan Covey, the ERA is 7.45. None of those guys will be starting games. Probably, well, hopefully not. Like,
we are going to talk about that.
But between Wheeler, Nola, and Ranger, the ERA against the Braves this season is a 3.1.
Yeah,
so like that's pretty drastic. And your Wheeler's lined up for games 2 and 5, so both of those starts are on the road. I know he was dominant in game 1 of the wild card, but he had 103 innings on the road this year, and his ERA was a whole run less at 3.16 as opposed to 4.13 at home. So like the guy loves pitching on the road. And I think 2 weeks ago when they played in Atlanta, he was very good.
Yeah.
And same thing with Nola. So like if we're just looking solely at pitching, like I love our 3 as opposed to their 3.
Yeah, to me, this series comes down to Atlanta's pitching, because even though I love what our staff did this series, and Nola looks to have turned a corner, Wheeler's Wheeler, Schwartz looking a little better from his early season struggles, and the bullpen is healthy and has looked good so far. Atlanta's still going to score their 4 to 6 runs a game. It's inevitable. The offense is historically too good to be held to 3 or less every game. It's just not going to happen. You look at the 3 games the Phillies won against the Braves last year in the NLDS. They scored 7 or more in all 3 of them. It was 7-6, like 8-3, and then 9-1 or something along those lines. Like,
yeah.
So like obviously you have to score, and Strider to me is the number one X factor in this series because he's gonna have 2 starts. Now, obviously, he can shut you down those 2 games, but if you just find a way to win the other 3, it really doesn't matter. That to me, that's the big thing. Getting maybe splitting one of his starts and dominating the rest of their guys who, this is not a as experienced playoff rotation they're going in with as they maybe expected at the beginning of the year, just because of the injuries, the fact that Strider's only playoff outing was 2 innings while he was hurt last year. It is a little different. So Atlanta's going to score, but if they give up enough runs, that's where the Phillies need to win this series is shootouts. It's not going to be holding the Marlins to a run a game again.
Yeah, and kind of going like looking at Strider specifically, like, I think honestly game 1 is kind of the X factor. And the thing about Strider is he's such a high strikeout guy. Mm-hmm. So like he's gonna get his 8 strikeouts or whatever, 8, 9 strikeouts, especially against our lineup, the way that they kind of work, which is fine. Like it's gonna be frustrating in the moment. But if it takes him, like if you work counts and it's 8, 9 strikeouts through 5 innings and he's at 90 pitches, like realistically their bullpen isn't deep or as deep as ours. I don't think like they have like they'll pull guys out of their hats. Like Iglesias is very good. I know we got
except against the Phillies.
We got to him a bunch the last 2 years, but like statistically, like he is one of the upper echelon closers of the league, and AJ Minter is fine. But if you look at their roster, I don't know if I'm missing one, but like Fried and Minter are their lefties. So they have to be. I know their roster, like the division series roster is not out yet, but like with how our lineup is, like we just saw the Marlins who tried to lefty us to death. Like if Topper kind of does what he does in spaces Schwarber and Harper out at the top and goes Schwarber, Turner, Bohm, Harper, like, and they only have Minter in the back there, they have to be very strategic about how they play it. So if you get Strider high pitch count in game 1 and you don't know what you're going to get out of Fried in game 2 as far as the blister, like they can be very thin on lefties. And if the games are close late, I'll take Schwarber and Harper up against righties any day of the week.
Brad Hand is the only other lefty.
Okay, so like roster. I said, Fried and Minter.
Yeah. Hey, he screwed us those 2 extra inning games. Drove me crazy. Yeah, so Atlanta's pitching. I'm going through the Jeff chart, man. There's IL next to pretty much like every name on here.
And it's like the thing is like one of the guys that they used a bunch, and he's like, it's if you look at his baseball reference, it is absurd because he's only good in Atlanta. But like, are we really gonna like Jesse Chavez comes in the 6th or 7th or 8th inning of a close game? It's like, I get it, he's effective and he flips the sinkers and the changeups and the sliders up there, but like realistically, he's not gonna overpower you. Like Jesse Chavez is not somebody who should be like overly intimidating in a close, high leverage playoff spot.
Yeah. I do. The pitching advantage does go to the Phillies, no matter how good Strider is, because in the playoffs, one guy is not.
It's just depth.
Yeah, it gets to who's deeper this time of year.
Max Fried is very good.
Kyle Wright, I guess, is their other guy in the mix.
Yeah, he's an option too, but he was hurt. He just came back and in September, and he wasn't like he was a 20-game winner last year, but he's not a 20. Like he wasn't. I think we saw him in September, one of the series, and like he wasn't great. And like Fried's very good, and he's done it before in World Series games and stuff. But like blisters are lingering injuries that you just don't know what you're gonna get.
Yeah. Trying to read if there's enough. So last year in game 4, the game the Phillies clinched against the Braves in the NLDS, they had to go to Noah Syndergaard to start the game. He went 3 innings a run or something along those lines, and then they scored a lot.
I know he went one time through the lineup, and yeah. I think actually, I don't think he gave up a run. I know he faced Acuna twice, I think, but that because he let one guy on. But I think that was it.
Well, I know the Phillies got up 3-0. Someone on the Braves hit a home run, and then Realmuto had the inside the park. It was 4-1. It was pretty much over there. So if Ranger goes Saturday, he will have 4 days off to pitch game 4 in Philly if needed.
The reason I think last year there weren't off days because of the lockout, so everything was jumbled together. So Ranger would have been on 3 days rest for game 4.
Mm-hmm.
So I think realistically it'll be Ranger 1-4, Wheeler 2-5, Nola 3.
Yeah. So then with the Braves, it'll be Strider matched up against Suarez twice. Obviously, you do not have an overwhelming advantage in those 2 games, but you get one of those. You're going to win this series, I feel like. If you can just split the Strider starts, I think they have the advantage with Nola and Wheeler in the other 2, and especially at home. If the Phillies could win out at home and just steal one in Atlanta, kind of like they did last year. The Braves obviously won 100 whatever games. They won the season series against the Phillies 8-5, but 3 of those games went to extras. And, the Phillies had a chance to win all 3 of them. Obviously, the first one was the one where Schwarber dropped a routine flyout. Look, he's not in left field anymore. It's Pasher and Marsh, who are above average defenders and certainly above average compared to Schwarber.
Kind of looking at the season series, we were 4-3 in Atlanta. So we did beat them in Atlanta. So that's also something positive about that.
Yeah, and don't even say the one series was at the end of the year when Atlanta didn't care. Early in the season, when the Phillies were actually struggling and the Braves were hot, down their 4-game series, it was 2-2.
Yeah.
So it is not just a recency bias thing.
Every game that they've played the last 2 years, every game has been for how good the Braves have been the last 2 years in the regular season. That we always make jokes about how the last 2 or 3 years the Phillies struggle with the Marlins. The Braves are one team in the division that when it comes to time to play them, they are always competitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Phillies play up to their competition. They sometimes are guilty of playing down their competition. That did not happen against the Marlins, thankfully. But yeah, with Atlanta, there's just no fear playing them. And, it started, I think, in game 1 last year where they just came out and roared with all those singles. And
they were all 2 outs.
Yeah, I think it just made them feel like they belong. And, they didn't really look back. Theoretically, Rhys Hoskins makes that one play in game 2. That could have been a sweep. I mean, They just totally outplayed them the entire series. And now, it's interesting. I see Braves fans oh, we're not taking them lightly, blah, blah, blah. It's it's the playoffs. I don't know why you're taking anyone lightly, but
it's Braves fans are putting on this masculine front and everything. But Snitker openly said we don't want to play them. And
WIP clipped that today. I did hear that.
And they weren't doing these simulated games from Marlins Park. They knew exactly what they were getting, and you and I personally were very cautious and scared of the Marlins series, but looking at it today, looking back on the last few days, it's hindsight's 20/20, but this was always kind of bound to happen.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, I mean this crash course. We saw it all season. The way these 2 teams played each other throughout the regular season were pretty much every game except the one game in Atlanta. Down in Atlanta killed them. I know it was 12-2 or something like that. But outside of that, you had 3 games go to extras. You had
that was
also come to the wire.
Wasn't that the Covey spot start around Memorial Day? Or
it was. Yeah,
Covey's been good, but come on, we can't use. I think we could kind of exempt that one from the books as far as Phillies Braves had to have when Dylan Covey gave up 5 home runs.
Right. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, and that game's probably a lot of that ERA you were talking about earlier too. But yeah, I don't know, because I know the Braves are going to come out and swing, and it's going to be ugly. and it's not going to be a walk in the park. Like
No.
this Marlins, like it's probably going 5. I'd be happy if it was just 4 and they don't have to go back down to Atlanta, obviously. But, beating this team 3-1, just it's not something with 2 at their place. It's just not something you expect. But I just keep going back to the pitching matchups because I think that's where it's going to be win or loss. And it's on the streaky Phillies offense to keep up with an historically great offense. And, if Turner hits the way he's hitting and Stott hits the way he hits, eventually Harper and Schwarber are going to get into their postseason modes. And if that happens with the lack of lefties the Braves have, it could get interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of talking about this like right before we started, but realistically, like not skill set wise, but just personnel, like the Marlins will probably be the toughest postseason roster, just personnel wise, that could have been matched up against our lineup, just because of the sheer amount of lefties that they had, who are all relatively decent. Like late as the rounds go by, and we kind of saw this last year, like Harper coming back from the injury last year, like the home run off Michaelis kind of got him going.
Mm-hmm.
But like Schwarber was non-existent for the first round and even the Braves series. And then once it came time for the Padres series, like he snapped into it. And he didn't have a bad 2 games, like single the leadoff game 1, the double down the line yesterday. Obviously he struck out a bunch, but like at this point, like 2 years in, we kind of know what we're getting from him.
Yeah, and they threw a billion lefties at him.
Yeah, and like Harper, the same thing. Like the at-bats weren't incredible, but like at this point, we saw what he did last year in October. Like I think we can all kind of get to the point where we can stop worrying about Bryce Harper, and when push comes to shove and the moment's there, like the guy's going to show up in some capacity. So like he'll be fine. And Atlanta, kind of like we talked about, doesn't really have the Marlins number of lefties to go at him. Like he's going to see a righty, and chances are it'll be Raisel Iglesias, who he's like 7 for 11 with 6 home runs off of.
Yeah, and the Iglesias thing is kind of interesting because obviously Brian Snitker has seen his closer get destroyed by this team multiple times this season. And you have to wonder if there's a spot in one of these games where maybe he wants to go to his best reliever, and it is Iglesias. And it's, it's not the 9th inning. It's the 7th or the 8th, and there's multiple runners on, and it's Turner or Harper up. And he just, doubts himself about putting him in that spot. He goes to someone else, not as good, and it blows up in their face. Like that kind of stuff. The Phillies could definitely be in their heads about some stuff. Like I don't think Atlanta is really in Phillies' heads. Just like the Iglesias numbers, what Snitker said, Strider with the fan comment. Like to me, that all that stuff is, like I think they can get into their psyche a little bit. Like, oh no, like especially if they come out in game 1 and hit around a little bit, like they could get, oh no, here we go again, in their heads.
Yeah, and it's like when you're kind of looking at the 2 aspects, like who's kind of in, like who has real estate and on which side. If you look at the Braves as far as like an intimidation thing, like I feel like that's just league wide. Like they've been really good. Their offense is intimidating. It's kind of just like on the surface. When you look at like the Phillies to the Braves, like after the playoffs last year, and just off some of the things that they've said in the last month, like I think it's kind of clear to see which team bothers the other more.
Yeah.
Like the Phillies aren't really talking. I mean, obviously Thompson kind of said that I want my guys to act like they've been there before, but like I don't think that that's kind of something that the Braves can kind of use as an extra gear. Like obviously they have the elimination last year as another gear that they can kind of go to in itself, but like I don't know, I feel like the last month the Braves have kind of just added fuel to the fire as far as the Phillies knowing that they bother the Braves.
Yeah. And it's kind of like how the Marlins have been with the Phillies, and it's why we had a little caution going into this last series, just because there is that psyche element to it. But I think when you play in Cincinnati Bank Park like that, a lot of that tends to go away. All right, so let's get into this. Like I mentioned, we both before the season started 6.5 months ago chose this exact situation as the end of the Phillies season. Where are we now on what's going to happen in this NLDS?
I think it goes 5, and I just think our pitching staff's just much deeper. And I mean, our Nolan Wheeler having 2 very good starts against Atlanta in Atlanta the last month of the season, like that was very encouraging to me. I know I was kind of talking to my dad before that series, and I was like the playoff odds are really high. I don't know if I want to burn Wheeler and Nola down in Atlanta when we're probably going to see them in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if I want them to get that last look, but after they both went 6 or 7 with 2 runs or less, I think, like I was like, okay, like that's good, mostly for Nola. I thought, for a guy who's really struggled this year, to kind of be like, okay, I did this against the best offense in their home stadium when I'm probably going to see them in less than a month in the playoffs. So I think our pitching prevails, and I will go Phillies in 5.
All right. I hate to go back on my word, I guess, but I knew even when I made that pick back in March that when this time came around, I would change my mind. That's where I'm at. 5. I think it does go 5. I'm gonna say 4 just to be different. But I do, if they get game 1, man, like I don't want to say you could sweep Atlanta, but like it with Wheeler game 2 down there, a place he pitches pretty well, and then they have to, if they came back up here down 0-2 with the way this crowd would be.
Oh my God, it would be.
Yeah, like I see that. I think it's more likely the Phillies could sweep than the Braves could sweep.
Yeah, I just think the Braves just have, and it's weird to say this after how dominant they are, or they were all year, but like half the battle with the playoffs is you have to be playing good at the right time, but you have to be healthy. And I just think there's question marks with that pitching staff. Like he's liable to be fully healthy and come out and shove, but like I just don't know what you're going to get out of Max Fried. And the loss of Charlie Morton. I know they hit him pretty well last year, but like that's a guy who's been there, done that, huge for the Astros when they won the World Series years ago. Like, you're missing that aspect of your playoff experience in your rotation, and Fried's banged up. So like there's just more question marks there than I think the Phillies have right now in terms of health in the pitching staff.
Yeah. The big thing for me is with the Phillies pitching staff, do not give up 8 or 9. Like, I know you're going to give up 4 or 5 at least, but your offense is in the game at that number, because we've seen this offense put up some big numbers against the Braves last year in the playoffs, and then a few games this year. Like, those games where a few of those games where Atlanta had big leads and the Phillies climbed back late to tie them and take them to extras. They have it in them to score on the Braves bullpen and put up runs when it matters, especially at home and especially against the Braves closer. So that, to me, it's just, Phillies pitching, keep it competitive, and then hope the lineup takes advantage of a little bit of injuries and struggles from the Braves pitching staff. I think that's really what this comes down to.
Yeah, and I mean, going off of that, like, the Braves are going to hit their home runs. Like, they're the first team in history to have a team slugging percentage over 500. So like they're going to mash, but like just limit them to solo home runs. Like, I know, kind of just looking at Nola specifically, he's been very prone to the home run this year. And looking at the Braves lineup, Austin Riley kind of like owns him. Like, if Austin Riley's going to hit a home run, make sure he's leading off an inning, or I don't know if they have him hit 3 or 4 anymore, but like make him lead off an inning or have it with 2 outs. Like just limit the big innings, and I think that they'll definitely have a fighting chance.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. All right, so that is gonna do it for this one. I guess I don't know. We'll be back after this series ends either way. So we'll talk to you, I guess, maybe in a week. Probably a little more than a week, considering it's Thursday. But hopefully, we're talking about the Phillies going to the NLCS again, probably against the Dodgers, the old 08-09 NLCS foe. So that would be a cool storyline too if that came out. All right.